2018 to session. Roll call. Trustee Karianis.
Here.
Trustee Bueller. Trustee Cisa.
Here.
Trustee Israel.
Here.
Trustee Collison.
Here.
Trustee Hahn.
Here.
President Fromm. Could I have a motion for President Pro Tem, please?
I move that Trustee Karianis be President Pro Tem for today's meeting.
I will second.
Okay. The voice vote okay? Or do you take a roll call?
I'll take roll call.
Okay.
Trustee Cisa.
Yes.
Trustee Israel.
Yes.
Trustee Collison.
Yes.
Trustee Hahn.
Yes.
President Pro Tem Karianis.
I'll abstain.
The meeting is yours.
Okay, thank you. All right, first item up is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'm going to call for a motion to approve the minutes of July 24th, 2018 regular Board Trustees meeting.
So moved. Second.
It's been a motion and seconded. Call the roll.
The twins.
Trustee Cisa.
Yes.
Trustee Israel.
Yes.
Trustee Collison.
Yes.
Trustee Hahn.
Yes.
President Pro Tem Karianis.
Yes. Next item up is we have a series of resolutions, and they're around retirements. Is Kent Figge here? There he is. How about Commander Tim Fitzpatrick? Okay. Mike Terry, Detective Mike Terry? No. Okay, and firefighter, engineer, driver Steve DeLuca. All right, I'm going to read one resolution since the others are not here, but we're honoring their service to the village. So the first one that I will read completely is for Kent Figge. After nearly 30 years of dedicated service in the Public Works Department, Fleet Supervisor Kent Figge retired on April 30th, 2018. Kent began his employment with the Village of Northbrook on August 1st, 1980, as a mechanic and was promoted to Fleet Maintenance Supervisor on June 27th, 2005, serving in that role for almost 13 years. Kent was responsible for overseeing the maintenance and safety of the village fleet of vehicles, including those of police and fire departments, a responsibility he took very seriously with a great deal of pride. Kent was also active with other communities and organizations, such as the Northwest Municipal Conference and Municipal Fleet Managers Association, in developing specifications for vehicles and equipment that are available to municipalities through joint purchasing contracts. In addition to his role as fleet maintenance supervisor, Kent was an integral part of the village green team that worked to implement sustainable practices within the village for coordination with the village's Earth and Arbor Day celebration. Kent also oversaw the electronics recycling of the fleet maintenance garage and was instrumental in obtaining a number of grants for energy efficiency projects at the village buildings, which included occupancy sensors for lights and conversion of lighting to LEDs. Kent has also chosen to continue to serve his village in a green way as a member of the Environmental Quality Commission. Whether it be the countless holidays and family events he missed while responding to after-hour vehicle emergencies, snow and windstorm operation, or going the extra mile to satisfy a resident, Kent has exemplified what Northbrook desires in its employees. Over the years of service, Kent has received countless notes of appreciation and commendations for a job well done. Now, therefore, be it resolved that by the President and Board of Trustees of the Village of Northbrook, County of Cook, and State of Illinois, that on behalf of the Village of Northbrook, sincere thanks and appreciation are expressed to Kent Figge for the nearly 38 years that he faithfully served this village. Talented, knowledgeable, and dedicated individuals such as Kent have contributed significantly to making the Village of Northbrook a desirable community in which to live and work. We thank you, Kent, for your contribution to this community, and we congratulate you on your retirement from the village. We wish you and your wife, Debbie, a long and rewarding and healthy future.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Kent, we have something for you here, and we want you to take this as a token of our appreciation, a small token. This is the resolution here that you can frame, and if you'd like to say a couple of words, we'd love to hear from you.
Great, yeah, thank you.
And thank you, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay, it all started with my father, Harvey. He worked for the building department in Northbrook from 1966 to 1987. He was a plan reviewer and chief building inspector. He encouraged me to apply for the opening in Public Works as a mechanic in 1980. At the time, I worked for a family-owned auto repair business in Glenview. My dad knew the staff in the Public Works garage and thought it would be a good career move for me, and it turned out he was correct. I enjoyed the variety of vehicles and the new experience that it brought with it. In 1992, Public Works took over the maintenance of the fire department vehicles as well, and again, many new challenges. In 2005, the fleet supervisor retired, and I was promoted to fleet supervisor. The biggest challenge for me was to bring all of the different departments together and address their vehicle needs both financially and operationally while trying to consider the best interest of all parties. As we worked through the CIP and budget process, we considered short and long-term needs of each department operationally and provided viable solutions with budgeted finances. The end goal was to have a transparent process working with the finance department, village manager, department heads, and the village board. Village manager John Novinson created the Green Team, and the Public Works director assigned me to be part of the team. While some people thought of the Green Team as punishment, I embraced the opportunity to make some operational changes for the village and ultimately benefit the residents of Northbrook. I had the pleasure of working directly with the assistant to the village manager, Dan Kaup. We applied for grant funding to replace inefficient lighting in many of our buildings and started the recycling program we have today. At the time, switching to CFL light bulbs from incandescent-style light bulbs was one of the easiest solutions to save energy for homeowners. With feedback from residents, we established they were hesitant to use the CFL bulbs because they contain mercury and there was not a convenient place to recycle them. The consensus of the Green Team was to provide an easy recycling option for the defective CFL bulbs, ultimately encouraging residents to use CFL-style light bulbs and save energy. We then expanded into household batteries and e-waste. In the fleet, we made many changes to be more environmentally responsible, and most of them saved money as well. A couple examples are the use of grant funding to install exhaust catalysts on the diesel trucks and to reduce emissions, and using retread tires where possible. I can't take credit for all the success of the fleet division. Over the years, Dave Vito, Mo Anderson, Rick Barron, Randy Reich, along with the current staff, are the reason we have been and will continue to be an efficient and accomplished fleet maintenance division in the Public Works Department. Everyone in the fleet division has a can-do attitude, and you can expect great results regardless of the assignment. I think everyone has walked through the fleet garage at 1227 Cedar and is familiar with our challenges with the building operationally. Regardless of the building, staff does their job day in and day out without a complaint or a problem. Our mission has been to provide the most efficient, economical fleet maintenance services with our staff, only contracting to outside vendors when absolutely necessary. Over the years, I have worked on water main breaks, flooding, ice and snow events, Earth Day, windstorms, and many special projects outside the normal scope of a Public Works mechanic or fleet supervisor. I enjoyed every opportunity and learned from all of them. I would like to thank Jim Reynolds for giving me the opportunity to be the fleet supervisor in 2005. My immediate boss was Paul Reisinger, and he was a great person to work for. He challenged you, but he always supported you to make sure you succeed, and we shared many laughs. I worry about the day Paul decides to retire. I can't think of another person with his diverse skill set and genuine concern for the residents of Northbrook. Thank you to Rich Nerestadt, Jeff Rowitz, Kelly Hamill, Matt Morrison, village staff, and the village board. It was a pleasure working with and for all of you. The town of Northbrook is near to my heart. I grew up here. I married a woman from Northbrook. I raised my children here and always considered it to be my town. I can't think of a better place to spend the last 38 years of my life. Thank you all.
Thank you. That's a tough act to follow. I'm going to read the several resolutions, and then I'll ask for a motion to pass them in an omnibus fashion. Resolution number 1895 is a resolution recognizing Commander Tim Fitzpatrick for 30 years of service in the police department. Resolution number 1896, a resolution recognizing Detective Mike Terry for 24 years of service in the police department. And the final resolution number 1897, a resolution recognizing firefighter engineer driver Steve DeLuca for 26 years of service in the fire department. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those resolutions pass. We have these resolutions. We will get to them as well as these books as a token of our appreciation, and we thank them for their many years of service. Next item up is hear from the audience. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on a matter that is not already on the agenda? If so, please come forward, state your name, tell us what town you're from, that's it, and you have 3 or 4 minutes to speak.
I'll be fast. Good evening, trustees. Tinsley Garris from the Northbrook Chamber of Commerce. I'm here tonight to give you a quick update on a few projects that the Chamber is working on. First, we're recruiting participants for our Leadership Northbrook program, an 8-session class that gives individuals a comprehensive look on the inner workings of Northbrook. The program covers a wide range of topics, including how municipal government works, zoning and planning, the local business climate, transportation, health and human services. Presentations are enhanced with tours of several of Northbrook's signature businesses and facilities, including UL, Highland Baking, the police and fire departments. The Chamber's been running leadership for nearly 30 years. It has well over 600 graduates. Our goal for the program really is to get individuals engaged with civic responsibilities, whether it's volunteering for a board at a not-for-profit or serving on the board here, and as well as establishing broad networks of leaders that can come together and make Northbrook a better place to live and work. Participation is open to residents and businesses alike. Anyone that's interested in the program can certainly call me at the Chamber offices. Second, August is really community service takes center stage at the Chamber, starting with a donation to the Civic Foundation Scholarship Fund and countless volunteer hours at Northbrook Days. However, our annual meal packing event is the culmination of our efforts. On August 30th, we'll have 260 business leaders from 80 different companies that will come together and package 50,000 fortified pasta meals for distribution through the Salvation Army of Greater Chicago. Not only is it a fun and feel-good activity, it really has been instrumental for us in helping businesses feel connected to the community as well as each other. And then finally, I wanted to let you know that the Chamber is organizing a job fair on Thursday, September 27th, in partnership with the library and Illinois WorkNet. Finding qualified employees continues to be one of the greatest challenges that our businesses are facing now. Again, if anyone's interested in the job fair, they can certainly contact me at the Chamber. I thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you very much. You don't include a tour of the water facility?
I just
Okay.
made a couple of them.
Okay, all right.
A little tidbit.
That's what makes Northbrook special. Okay, anyone else that would like to come up? Please come up and state your name, unless you're Lee Goodman.
In that case, I'm Lee Goodman. It's a pleasure to be back with you this evening. Last night I was driving back from Evanston, and when I got to Tower Road, we weren't allowed to go very far because a massive number of police officers were cordoning off the area at Hubbard Woods. We didn't know what was going on. When we got home, we learned the news that probably all of you know. It was just another deployment of a SWAT team for just another suburban shooting.
Ugh.
And I started to think, well, as I usually do, what could be done to prevent these sorts of things in the future? And I thought about what has been done and what have we been doing. We've heard it said here, and in many instances, we don't need more laws, we need enforcement of the laws already on the books. And I don't really agree with that entirely. Sometimes we do need more laws, but I absolutely agree we do need enforcement of the laws on the books. And I have in mind the question about how are we enforcing the law that this board recently passed in May, saying that establishments that have liquor licenses cannot permit people to bring concealed carry guns into their premises, and that they must post signs at the entrances to their businesses. The way you phrased this law, the way you wrote it, made a lot of sense, because state law says that anyone with a concealed carry permit can bring a gun into a restaurant or a bar unless there is a sign posted saying they can't. So what you've done is said you can't, and you have to let people know about it. And this makes a lot of sense. I don't know how we're enforcing this, frankly. I do know that I've talked with the village clerk, and some special efforts were made to let businesses who have these licenses know about their obligations. But I think that it's important we keep in mind that particularly when you have a public safety ordinance like this and when it's new, that it's important to enforce it, not just because of what that ordinance accomplishes, but in order to establish that this village is serious about enforcing all of its ordinances, that the village will be taken seriously. Now, I have not done a systematic survey of the town, but I live around here. I go to the shops, and from my informal view, I can tell you compliance is pretty good. Most of the restaurants that I've seen in town now have the signs up, which is pretty significant because most of them didn't used to. A lot of them refused to until you passed the law. But there are some obvious violations, and there are two of which I think you want to know about this evening. The first is a restaurant in downtown Northbrook. It's a pretty large place. It has a banquet hall. And they have one sign posted, kind of. They've posted it behind tinted, partially mirrored glass so that it's pretty much hard to see in daylight. And at night, you'd have to press your nose up against the glass to see the sign at all, let alone to see what it says. Now, obviously, this business, or I shouldn't say obviously, apparently this business is run by idiots, because you'd have to be an idiot to think that this board would consider that to be what the ordinance says needs to be done, and that is that the signs must be clearly and conspicuously posted. But follow what happens next. From that one door, you walk a few feet to the other door to that business, which leads into its banquet area, and then to the other door, which is actually 3 doors because it's a 3-way revolving door. So you've got 5 door panels, each of which should be posted, only one of which is, which means they are permitting people to go in with concealed guns if they just go through the right door. And they must be idiots to think you'd let them get away with that kind of thing, right? Right? The second business I want to bring to your attention, I'm not going to mention their name because you've got to have a little sympathy for a business that's being run by idiots, but the second business I want you to know about is a grocery store in downtown Northbrook. Let me tell you what I know about the history of it. There's a fellow named Ron who used to run it, and he said a couple of years ago when I asked him to post signs, he said, no, we're not going to do that. But after you passed your ordinance, he said to me, Lee, and he called me by name, he said, Lee, we're going to put those signs up because now everyone has to, so he didn't see it as a competitive disadvantage anymore. He said, we're going to post them. I thought, that's great. But a couple of weeks later, I saw they hadn't posted the sign. So I went to the guy who now manages it, and I named Bruce. I said, Bruce, you don't have the signs up. When are you going to put them up? He said, we do. And he took me out to the door, and he pointed out, sure enough, there's the sign on the side door. So I took him over to the front door, and there's no sign there. You know the front door, the main entrance, the one with the canopy where when you give them numbers and they take the groceries out to your car, the one that's right near the bar where they're serving alcohol by the glass, there's no sign there. And I said, what about that? And he said, well, that's a corporate decision. I said, well, have you talked to corporate about it? He said, no. I said, would you do that? And he said he would. So I checked back with him a couple of weeks later. I said, have you heard back from corporate? He said, no. So a week later, because I'm in there on a regular basis buying my groceries, a week later I said, what does corporate say? And he said, they're just going to do what they're doing now. They've decided they're not going to post any more signs. So what do you have here? Well, you have one of the most prominent, politically connected businesses in town outright refusing to obey your laws. Well, if you don't want to just take what Ron said about it as evidence that they're doing this knowingly and intentionally, and if you don't want to just take what Bruce said about it or what I'm telling you, look at the door where they've got the sticker posted, because they've got a very peculiar sticker. Most places just have the sticker you're familiar with as a picture of a gun and a slash through it, and it's red. Theirs has a special line at the bottom, and I've never seen anywhere else. And it says, this is posted pursuant to Northbrook ordinance. They so much didn't want to post this sticker that they put a special line there telling everyone, we're only posting it because we have to. But what's the significance of this? It's an admission in writing, posted for the world to see, that they know they're supposed to post these signs, and they're refusing to do so. So you might be wondering, which grocery store is this we're talking about here? Well, it's the one that's always eager to bring a cake to a village hall meeting if you've got someone who's retiring or being honored for their service. It's the one that sends someone to have his picture taken with the mayor every year cutting a watermelon at the opening of the farmer market. It's the one that brings a popcorn wagon to support Northbrook Days. It's the one that's a member of Rotary with some of the people on this board right here. And I wonder, do they think that all this cozying up to you people on the board excuses them from following the law? Do they think that because they treat you this way, they're going to get special treatment? And then I wonder, if they think that, what would give them that idea? But those are just questions I ask myself. I've got a question for all of you. I don't know who here is going to answer it, but someone ought to. And my question is, when are you going to fine Sunset Foods for an ongoing, intentional, knowing violation by allowing people to bring concealed guns into a store and not posting as it's required to by your law? And how long are you going to let this go on before you revoke their liquor license altogether? Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Okay, next item up. Is there anyone else that would like to speak hear from the audience? Come on up, please. State your name and tell us what town you're from.
Daniel Schulman from Northbrook.
Wait, Dan, are you going to speak on the,
Are we on agenda items? or
yeah,
non-agenda
you are,
items?
you are, yeah.
Okay, so not in this section.
Yeah, it's going to be the first one up in planning and zoning, and it'll be me. And I'll call you.
You'll call me.
You
Yeah.
bet I will.
A little later.
No worries.
All right, anyone else? All right, we're going to move on to the manager's report.
Just want to say that from the village's perspective, Northbrook Days went very smoothly this year. I want to thank the police, fire, public works, as well as Tom's department, DPS, as well as Village Hall and manager's office. Spent a lot of time with coordinating with Civic, and also the board helped out, and I really appreciate that. And the event went very smooth from a village perspective, public safety perspective.
Is that it?
That's it.
Thank you so much. Next item up is the warrant list. Catherine?
Yes, so I've reviewed the warrants, and I'm going to move for the approval of Class A and B warrants totaling $2,533,300.54, and this is for the period of July 16, 2018 through July 31, 2018.
It's been a motion and second. Call the roll.
Trustee Cecil.
Yes.
Trustee Israel. Yes. Trustee Collison. Yes. Trustee Hahn.
Aye.
President Pro Tem Karianis.
Yes.
Okay, President Pro Tem Karianis, I'm going to move for the approval of frontage deposit refunds dated July 30, 2018, Class A total $27,700.
Been a motion and seconded. Call the roll, please.
Trustee Cecil.
Yes.
Trustee Israel. Yes. Trustee Collison. Yes. Trustee Hahn.
Aye.
President Pro Tem Karianis.
Yes. Thank you. That takes care of those. Next item up is the President's report, or the President Pro Tem's report. I have no report, so we can move on. Next item up is the consent agenda. Now, the matters listed for consideration of the consent agenda are matters that appear to have unanimous support of the Board of Trustees. The village president will review, designate the resolution or ordinance number for passage, and then inquire if any member of the board or members of the public objects to any item on the consent agenda. If objections are raised, the matter will be removed from the consent agenda and relocated to a location on this agenda for consideration during the appropriate board committee report. If no objection is voiced, the village president will request a motion and second for passage of all items listed. The resultant roll call vote will be on the consent agenda will be applicable to each and any individual item. Does anybody want to take anything off or put anything on the consent agenda? Seeing none and hearing none, then these items, starting with resolution number 1898, I believe, is that right?
That's correct.
And resolution 1899, 100, 101, 102. Ordinance number
1839.
39, ordinance number 1840 and 1841. These items are a matter of public record. I will not read through each and every individual item. You can certainly check yourselves these items. Is there a motion to have all the items on the consent agenda approved?
Second.
It's been a motion and seconded. Please call the roll.
Trustee Cecil.
Yes.
Trustee Israel.
Yes.
Trustee Collison.
Yes.
Trustee Hahn.
Aye.
President Pro Tem Karianis.
Yes. Now we're up for committee reports, planning and zoning. Catherine Cecil.
Yes, so what I'd like to do is we'll take item B with a quick staff report, right? And then we'll hear from the audience, and then we'll hear from the board.
The subject property, 4201 Lake Cook Road, the applicant is the property owner and Eating Recovery Center. They are proposing an inpatient adolescent eating recovery center at this location. The preliminary review was conducted earlier this year in January. The board provided feedback. The applicants returned to the Plan Commission with a formal application for the facility. And after multiple hearings, 3 public hearings, the Plan Commission approved a resolution for the Eating Recovery Center. This is the final proposed site plan for the facility. There are no exterior changes to this building or the property. The significant items to be noted here is the relocated trash enclosure, the identification of loading zone, and some landscaping that was proposed to be installed in front of the front door. Again, there are no changes proposed to this parking lot. There is a screening fence that the Plan Commission made a condition of approval to the resolution, which is identified and highlighted in red here, which is on the property at 50 Constance Lane. That was part of the public comment. This is the floor plan for the building. This is the first floor, which is largely going to remain unchanged at this time. The Eating Recovery Center would be occupying half of the second floor, which is identified in blue on the left side, and the entire third floor for their inpatient facility, which is on the right side. This is the floor plan detail. It shows the type of rooms. They have 3 different types of rooms: single, double, and triple occupancy. The triple is highlighted in red here. That was a comment that was discussed at length at the Plan Commission meeting in relation to density of this facility. There is community treatment rooms here, conference rooms, and offices as part of this floor plan. Some of the major Plan Commission comments that came up during the public hearing were related to the location of the trash enclosure and screening for some of the residential properties to the east, loading operations for this facility, and the identification of loading area on the site, parking lot lighting and its impact on the residential properties, security of the facility, especially the inpatient facility at the 3rd floor, staffing levels, staff and patient ratio, more specifically for the nighttime. Also, ERC, Eating Recovery Center, had proposed that there will be outside breaks with patients stepping outside, and staffing levels for those were discussed at the meeting as well. Facility density, which is the number of patients per room, and the overall design of the 3rd floor was discussed at the meeting as well. A couple of different comments were related to the regulation of this facility, the type of licensure, and certification for the personnel was discussed as well, and the special permit term for this special use was discussed as well. These were the conditions of approval, which is listed here in an abbreviated form, but it's part of your memo. Was proposed by the Plan Commission and has been included in the resolution and shall be included in the ordinance moving forward if and when that's prepared. As the board considers the resolution from the Plan Commission, these are the issues that the board would be considering when the ordinances are prepared. That would be related to the rezoning of the property from R1 to O2, the special permits to be granted for Eating Recovery Center and the building height for the existing building, and the variations to be granted for the existing site, as well as any conditions that should be included in the ordinance. At this time, we request the board to look at the restrictive covenant, which was included in the packet. Eating Recovery Center would not be allowed on this property unless the restrictive covenant as it exists today is amended or repealed. The applicant is requesting to repeal the covenant based on board's direction received at the preliminary review. Staff has prepared a marked-up document which is specifically at this time focused on zoning issues, and it highlights how zoning issues in the covenant would be affected through this particular use for your consideration. One of the items that's highlighted in the memo as well, which staff recommends, is freezing the O2 use list post-amendment and inclusion of ERC as a permitted use, as a special use in O2 district. To keep in mind would be any future use which would not be part of this list. If a proposal comes in on the property, it will, the covenant and the zoning code will have to be amended again to allow the new use on the property. Staff is looking for more direction on this document in order to move forward with the other approval documents for this particular application. Thank you.
So let's see, do any of the members of the board have any questions for staff at this point?
I do.
Okay, Trustee Israel?
Just a question. I did not find it in there. Maybe it's already covered. I noticed that there's really no outside improvements, and yet the folks were very certain about taking breaks outside. So I was just wondering if there's any amenities that are going to be provided, garbage cans, picnic tables, something out here that these people can sit at while they're outside.
Specifically, as far as amenities is concerned, that was not discussed or that did not come up. However, I would like to clarify that the way Eating Recovery Center presented their application, and they are here to answer more questions, but the breaks are supposed to be 15 minutes each, supervised at a ratio of 1:6, and the idea was just to step out, get some fresh air, and walk back inside. So they're not expecting
anybody to sit, anybody to talk, I mean, it just seemed an oddity to me. They might want to consider that in the future.
It's more like a clinic, though.
I understand that, but even so, if you're going to come outside, you don't just stand.
Well, I'm sure there's no smoking in the building, right?
Right.
So people would come out to smoke, so.
These are mostly young people, though, right?
Yeah.
adolescent facility, yes.
That was my only concern among everything else. I just didn't notice any outdoor amenities that might be conducive to something like that.
Anybody?
Any more questions?
I do. I had one. There was some conversation at the Plan Commission level about security of the patients inside the building. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? What were the issues and what were the resolutions, real quick?
So when the first round of submittals came in, police department had some concerns, and their comment letter included some questions and concerns which were not responded to by ERC the first time around. So that caused some discussion at the Plan Commission. They came back with more information. Some of that included the door alarms and the length of the corridor, the response time, the distance between the first door and the main door of the building, and how the time would elapse in terms of
enough time to respond. Okay.
And all of that back and forth was done between the police department and the applicant. and the Plan Commission wanted to make sure that the security concerns of the police department was taken into account, and I believe that the final letter of approval from the police department was included in the packet. So it was responded to their satisfaction first.
Okay. I just want to remind everyone that there's a preschool right adjacent to this property. And this is the same property that was petitioning to put a mental health facility there, which failed. And it failed primarily because, you're concerned about the security of the young people that are just right next door. Now, eating disorders are a little bit more, they're not something that necessarily involve violence, but a lot of eating disorders are related to depression, and you are worried a little bit about people that may suffer from excessive depression that manifests itself as an eating disorder. But I just wanted to bring that up to remind my fellow trustees if they had forgotten.
So what I'd like to do is hear from the audience now, or the folks who are here. I know Dan Schulman is here to speak. And so why don't we do that, and then we'll have some additional board discussion, and then we'll call for a vote.
Okay.
Thank you. If you could state your name and the town you're from.
Daniel Schulman from Northbrook. President Pro Tem Kirianis and trustees, thank you. I live at 4235 Lindenwood, practically across the street from the proposed location. And I thank the board for their stewardship for the community, for ensuring that the use of our land in Northbrook is consistent with our village goals and values. And what I hope to do with my remarks is give you a broader perspective and also a more personal perspective to the consideration the board is giving later to allow the Eating Recovery Center to operate this building. As citizens, we rely on the Board of Trustees' judgment to ensure that businesses utilize the space in Northbrook and are using it responsibly, and as a citizen, I thank you for that work. What we're talking about tonight, though, can't be lost sight of. It is one thing to consider whether the community would benefit from another retailer or housing development or source of tax revenue, and I wouldn't lose an ounce of sleep if we didn't allow another Walgreens or Dunkin' Donuts to move into the community, or decided whether some vacant corner should be a condo or a gas station. But I'm going to tell you, without an ounce of exaggeration, there is one child in this community, in our village, who would very well be dead if not for the ERC. I'm asking you to keep in mind, as you talk about making sure that businesses in this community uphold our shared values as a village, that this is not an enterprise coming here as a convenience to just make money off of the village. This is an enterprise that might very well save lives, and already saved the life of one young man who lives practically across the street from the facility. In the spring of 2014, my son stopped eating. We watched helplessly as he faded away. We weren't blind to it, and we were proactive. We had medical professionals, therapists, school psychologists, all involved in trying to stop the onset of anorexia. At his parent-teacher conferences in October, his teachers reported a child that was a ghost, an empty shell in the classroom. His BMI was dangerously low, in the single digits. And from April to October, this 10-year-old boy had lost 1/4 of his body weight. We pulled him from school, and we put him in a local partial hospitalization programs in Northbrook for kids with anxiety-related disorders. They tried to help, and they designed recovery plans, and while they had some eating disorder experience, they were not experts. After about 4 weeks, we had to seek more intensive treatment. And the problem was there were no facilities anywhere near here, not one, that would take a teenage boy. The ERC's facility at Lurie Hospital would not take boys. No other place would except their facility in Denver. It was the only place in the country we could find that would take him. The doctor who designed that program in Denver, the only co-ed adolescent and preteen facility in the country, is designing this program for the Northbrook facility. We wanted to avoid sending him 1,000 miles away for who knows how long. So we brought him to a hospital in the western suburbs that said they had an eating disorder program, but it was for adults. But they claimed that they could treat him in their troubled teen program and cross-treat with the adult eating disorder program. And he was there barely a week before they realized they were in over their heads. The day after Thanksgiving 2014, his mother drove him out to Denver. I flew out to meet them, and he was admitted to the ERC. We saw him for at most an hour at a time on weekends for about 4 weeks. We had no idea how long he would be there, when we would see him more regularly, and if he would recover. It was a terrible experience, literally full of terror, and I don't wish it on any parent. During that time, his mother and I alternated weeks living at a Ronald McDonald House in Denver, while the other was back home with his brothers. We stayed there entire weeks, even though we couldn't see him, just to be close to him, but away from our other sons. The hardship was incredible, but not as hard as what he was going through. After a month or so, we got to see him more often. We could come during the week and have a snack with him, but we couldn't stay long, and we started to see some progress. We were instructed on how to eat with him to make him comfortable and learn some of the techniques that he was being taught. And I remember the first time sitting with him as he had a tiny cup of yogurt, like that big, and 2 crackers. And he was learning to pace himself, to slow down while he was eating. It took an agonizing 15 minutes for him to do what he was supposed to do and finish just the tiniest cup of yogurt. And those would become lifelong lessons. In the meantime, just about every day we had parent class where the staff lectured on eating disorders and talked about what the disease was, how they were treating it, how we as parents needed to treat ourselves, and how we would need to help in their recovery when they returned so there wouldn't be relapses. My son was one of very few boys there, all young. The rest were girls, probably 5 to 10 girls for every boy. The facility was immaculately maintained with incredibly responsible and compassionate doctors, nurses, therapists, and nutritionists, specialists in eating disorders, who had techniques and insights that other programs we tried didn't have. And it was no wonder the earlier programs had failed. The kids relied on each other, learned in group and individual treatment, and different kids were at different points of their treatment. New kids would come, others would graduate to the partial program, where they could leave at night and come back during the day for treatment. Security was locked down. Nobody who didn't belong could get in. I can't imagine how any patient could have gotten out, and over the time that Noah was there, nobody tried. And for most of the kids, visits were infrequent. Even in the winter in Denver, with some pretty bad snow days, the facility allowed parents, to come in and out when they had to, and besides staff, nobody really came and went during the day. It was about 6 to 8 weeks before my son could stay with us at the Ronald McDonald House. But he returned to the ERC in the morning for breakfast and a full day of meals and treatments, and he would have snacks with us at night. And that would be the proving ground for whether we could feed him when he resisted, which he still did too often. The ERC coordinated with his District 27 school the entire time he was there so he could keep up with lessons. The transition back was hard, but he was not so behind that he couldn't catch up. And by the end of January, he was ready to come home. He wasn't completely cured, but he was ready to finish the recovery with his family. And we were armed with knowledge and techniques for how to treat him. I want you to imagine the helplessness you would feel if your child would not eat. He wasn't an infant. We couldn't just strap him to a high chair. We couldn't spoon feed him. We couldn't stick a bottle in him. We didn't have a feeding tube at home to hook him up to while he slept, which was actually common for many of the kids who were so undernourished they couldn't physically take in enough calories just to stabilize their bodies for treatment and would walk around with feeding tubes all day long. If your child won't put a fork in his mouth, what are you supposed to do? I remember having that question for the ERC staff. He won't put a fork in his mouth. How do you make him? I don't know the answer, but they did. And before we left Denver, he and I had a meal together. We went to Del Frisco Steakhouse, and we split a $69 filet. I remember the price. He had never eaten steak before, even before he developed anorexia. And for the first time in nearly 7 months, I sat across from the table from him while he enjoyed eating. And he asked me, is this what steak tastes like at home? And I said, no, not even close. He said, why don't they have the good steak like this at Shavitz? And I said, they don't have good steak like this anywhere unless you pay $69 for a filet. And he took a bite, and I don't know if you've ever experienced watching a food coma, but it literally happens when their eyes roll back in the back of their head from the actual joy of eating. 7 months after he was wasting away. To this day, the kid, who even at his healthiest had subsisted on bagels, chicken tenders, and pretzels, eats a varied diet. He is healthy, he is strong, he is a phenomenal athlete, and he is mentally tough. And the ERC saved his life. And it saves the lives of parents, too, who come helpless and left confident and empowered, even if scared. And yet, how much better would it have been on everyone if the location were across the street and not 1,000 miles away? How much better for his brothers to have their parents around? Insurance covered most of the ERC, but it didn't cover the cost of our travel. It didn't cover the cost of our disruption to work. And I hope this board considers, too, the community from this perspective. Eating disorders, while they may be rare among boys and rare for children as young as my son was, are not rare in this community. And I would challenge you, President Pro Tem Kirianis, to talk to doctors about whether or not eating disorders really do have relation to violence and depression. It's not a violence and depression issue. It has to do with anxiety and control. This community, Glenbrook North, Glenbrook South, Stevenson, Deerfield, New Trier, these are schools that, for all their reputation and success, can grind up teenagers and spit them out. The pressure to succeed, whatever success means, is too much for many kids to bear. I have friends in Buffalo Grove, in Vernon Hills, and there was a period over the last few years where Stevenson averaged multiple suicides per year. One is too many, but this went on year after year. A students, honor students, successful, active students, not kids on drugs or kids that we would think were troubled, but they were troubled. We live in a community that needs a place like the ERC, maybe more than any other community I can imagine. And I've seen the lives they save because one of those wakes up in my house. So please, trustees, consider whether, once the ERC has met every code requirement, you're willing to tell them no because they're not a fit for this community, or this or that zoning requirement, or some restrictive covenant whose time is long past. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, because the community will look at what you decide here and ask, did you do good? It's not that complicated. Saving lives is good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this issue? So then, seeing none, hearing none, Trustee Israel, do you have anything to add? That's a really tough act to follow.
Nothing. He had me at hello. I was all ready to vote for this anyways.
Yeah. Trustee Collison?
No, let's vote.
Trustee Hahn?
Nothing further to add.
President Pro Tem Kirianis?
There is one open item, and that is about the restricted
Yes,
covenant.
yes, there is.
But I certainly would be in favor of this facility there, and we could resolve the restrictive covenant issue.
By following the staff's recommendation,
I think
then?
so, yeah.
Yes? The consensus on that? Staff's recommendation?
Which recommendation?
It was the second one.
The second
one?
Second one. We retain the restricted covenant,
Yes.
but we amend it.
Correct.
Correct.
Yes? So
That's
do
fine.
I have a motion to approve, subject to retaining and amending?
So just to clarify,
Yes.
When we talk about retaining and amending, we're retaining it. Obviously, it's going to need to be amended to allow this property to be in the O2 district.
Yes.
Correct.
And of the permitted uses.
Freeze the O2 use list, right?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so freeze the O2 useless as it stands with the addition of this new use, which is going to be included in a zoning code text amendment.
Correct.
To allow this new use.
Well, I guess let me ask this. Would any of the other trustees be amenable to removing to making this as currently zoned, as zoned as per the owner's request, and removing the restrictive covenant?
I would vote against that.
Okay.
I would follow trustee Kirianis.
Okay,
So,
then that's fine.
I just remember too that President Vroom had been with trustee Kirianis, and it seemed to be the wise route, so I agree with trustee Kirianis as well.
Just wanted to test the waters.
fair enough. So is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Yep. So this is a motion to direct staff and the village attorney to prepare documents for your next meeting.
Sure, yes. Debbie?
Just
direction is enough?
Yeah, you can do a voice vote on that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, good.
So it will be on the agenda at our next board meeting for approval, correct?
You'll have a resolution approving an amended restrictive covenant, and then you'll have the ordinances granting the text amendment and then the various zoning relief that's required.
Is it likely to be on the consent agenda? Or we don't know?
We don't know.
Based on what we're saying here, the board we can put it on consent.
We can put it on
Somebody can
consent.
always remove it if they want, but I would put it on consent based on the direction tonight.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Moving on to C and D. Who's going to be talking to us? All right. You all don't have to stay, but if you want to, you can. People leave us all the time.
Lee, you have to stay.
The Northfield Township Road District is the applicant requesting to move its headquarters from Glenview to 237 Melvin Drive. In Sky Harbor, this is a property which is zoned I-1. The applicant is requesting to rezone the property to IB, which will be a more appropriate zoning for use such as this, which is a public agency for other governmental uses. The Plan Commission has found the request appropriate and has approved the resolution for the use with a condition regarding resolution to screening with the adjacent neighbors, which I'll get to in a minute. The site plan has minimal changes. The more important changes on the site is the 20-foot tall shed, which is a salt shed that will be placed in the rear of the property. The rear is going to be enclosed with a 8-foot high fence, and a new trash enclosure is being proposed just north of the building. The existing warehouse building will be used for storage of the township equipment and vehicles. This is the salt shed, which is currently at its existing location, and the new proposed salt shed would look something similar to this. In the days leading up to the Plan Commission, the applicant received public comment from the neighbors to the north and to the south. The neighbor to the north, which is at 2900 MacArthur Boulevard, had reservations about screening between the two properties and the encroachment of trucks past the curb and encroaching the egress, which is the sidewalk as seen in the photograph. The applicant reached out to the adjacent neighbor. They have come to a resolution of the issue. The proposal at this time is to plant arborvitae trees at the location which is identified here in the site plan up to the westmost end of the sidewalk. The area here identifies the screening for the property to the north. The line in red shows the new arborvitae trees, and the green is the proposed and existing fence. So that area basically would be screened from 237 Melvin Drive. The property to the south is Wiss Cheney Elsner Associates. They had some reservations regarding screening as well. There has been a proposal to, as stated in the memo, was to discuss the fence. However, discussions post the pass out for the board agenda, the parties have exchanged communication, and the plan has changed to propose arborvitae trees and landscaping at this side of the property line as well. That is identified here on the site plan on the south side. Both parties are here to explain their current position, which has gone into discussion until 7 p.m., and I would let Stu explain that.
So we have spoken with both the township and the representative from Wiss Cheney Elsner. There is a letter dated August 14th, which was directed towards Mr. Tim Rucker for the Northfield Village Township Road District from Edward A. Steffen, Associate General Counsel, that represents the private agreement between the neighboring parties. This, to the extent that this is a private agreement, basically we're going to encapsulate certain key provisions of this into the ordinance that's being proposed for you tonight. I would call your attention to page 279 of your packet. You don't have to read along with me, but I'm going to tell you what we're proposing to do is that we're going to remove the condition 4B, which is fence variation. It's going to be removed completely from the proposed ordinance. Sections 5B and C, which are two conditions related to fencing, are also going to be removed from the ordinance. And we are proposing placing the following language, and Debbie, don't worry, I've already typed this out and we'll be sending it to you. The new condition B, the applicant shall install landscaping buffers in the form of arborvitae trees along the northern and southern boundary line of the subject property in a manner acceptable to the neighboring property owners to the north and south and the village's Director of Development and Planning Services. Such landscaping buffers may be installed across the neighboring property lines pursuant to the consent of the respective property owners. There are other terms, including some financial terms between the parties, which are a private matter, which we're not going to encapsulate or put into any sort of restrictive covenant. But if the parties would like to come up and basically put on the record that they're agreeing to these terms in one moment, then you'll have that for the we'll have that for the record. There's also some commitments that if Wiss Cheney Elsner comes in later requesting some variations for further screening at their cost and expense, that the township would not oppose that. Those are not conditions that we're going to put into our ordinance because, once again, it is a private matter between two parties. Are there any questions?
So, Stuart, you're asking both parties to just come up and basically just either agree or disagree with what you just said, not to re-summarize what you just said,
yes.
Correct?
Yeah, basically, we feel that this letter that has been sent that we've been copied on, if both parties could get up on the record and say that it reflects the meetings of the minds between the parties, they understand the terms, and that they agree to them, then they can publicly shame each other later if they feel like it.
Okay, so then what I would ask is individuals from both parties come up one at a time, identify who you are, what party you're from, affirm that you have the authority to approve or acquiesce to what our attorney just said, and then, acquiesce, and then that's really all we need. I can help you through it, or, okay.
My name is Tim Ruckert. I'm the Highway Commissioner for Northfield Township Road District. I'm an elected official, and by Constitution, I have the authority to control the road district and road district properties.
Okay, and then you heard...
I do agree with what the village attorney has said. We have an agreement between WJE and Northfield Township Road District for some financial considerations, and non-approval of fencing.
Okay, as reflected in part in the letter of August 14, 2018?
Correct.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Edmund Steffen, Associate General Counsel with Jenny Elsner and Associates, Inc. As the village attorney suggested, we did enter into a private agreement, and I do have authority to enter into the agreement on behalf of West Jenny.
And the terms of the agreement substantially reflect, aside from the monetary consideration, reflect what our attorney addressed this evening?
It does accurately reflect the agreement, and just to underscore that we would like to come back one day if, in fact, we would like to seek defense as referenced in the agreement.
Okay, very good, thank you. You can sit down, thank you. Do the trustees, I can start with Trustee Israel, do you have any comments or questions or thoughts?
No comments.
Trustee Collison, no. Trustee Hahn?
No comments.
Trustee President Pro Tem Karianis?
No comments, other if they're happy, then I'm happy.
Okay, so I have nothing further to say other than I will make a motion that we approve items, I think it's C and D, subject to the modifications that Stuart indicated, which would be to remove, starting on page, I guess, 279 of our packet, paragraphs 4B and 5B and C, and replace it with the language that he read into the record. And I'm looking for a second.
Second.
And then call a vote. Debbie? Right.
Okay, Trustee Cecil.
Yes.
Trustee Israel.
Yes.
Trustee Collison.
Yes.
Trustee Hahn.
Yes.
President Pro Tem Karianis.
Yes.
Okay. There is nothing further on planning and zoning.
Thank you very much. Job well done. The next item up would be public safety, but he's not here this evening, so absent the trustee, I don't think there's a report. Next item up is administration and finance.
There's nothing to say other than I received a thank you from the Northbrook Women's Club, and I would like to thank all of the trustees who made that contribution personally, so we kept our village number where it has been.
Very nice, thank you. Next item up is Public Works.
Public Works. Several meetings ago, the board received a request by a resident to review the conditions at Walters and Cedar with respect to safety. At this point, I'd like to ask the village engineer to come up and give a report to the board.
Okay. So tonight I'll give you a brief update on the Cedar Lane, Walters Avenue traffic study. The first slide shows an overview of Cedar Lane and Walters Avenue. You can see in the red circle, that's the intersection that we're discussing. We can see how close we are to Shermer, and just off the right on Shermer is the railroad tracks. This is a close-up view of the intersection. North and south, they stop on Cedar, and east and west on Walters has the right-of-way. Here we have a few slides showing the intersection, just to refresh your memory. You'll see here we have two signs, both north and south for Cedar. Two stop signs, both sides of the road. Cross traffic does not stop as posted. Here's another view of the intersection showing from the southeast corner and Walters Avenue looking west. This last picture is looking north on Cedar Lane, crossing Walters Avenue. So one of the volumes, or one of the requirements by the MUTCD is for volume, vehicle volume. 300 units per hour for 8 hours on Walters would be the main line, which would be required, and 200 units per hour for 8 hours on Cedar, which is considered the secondary road. The actual data collected was 300 units per hour on Walters, so the requirement was met for the MUTCD. However, we only had 200 units per hour requirement was met for only 5 hours on Cedar. So the volume requirement component of the warrant is not met. Site distance, there was not a site distance issue, so the site distance component of the warrant is also not met. And we looked at delay. The MUTCD requires An intersection delay of an average of about 30 seconds per vehicle during the highest hour. And the highest hour for this intersection was 5 to 6 p.m. Southbound delay of 30.4 seconds per vehicle was met. However, northbound on Cedar of 25.7 seconds was a bit short of the delay. Since we did not have both of them being met, then the overall delay requirement was not met. We then studied crashes, and for the MUTCD, 5 or more reported crashes that occur within a 12-month period, which are considered correctable, is the requirement. And for 2017, we had 8 total crashes in 2017, of which 7 were correctable. So the crash component of the warrant has been met. I'd like to add that in 2018, around June, we had 3 correctable crashes, so we're creeping in on the 5 that would be needed. So then we looked at the queue, or the backup, that is going to be caused due to the stop condition on Walters for the all-way. And the queue on Walters are expected to be fewer than 6 stopped vehicles during the peak hours, and the queues on Cedar Lane are expected to be fewer than 2 vehicles during the peak hours. So the proposed next steps, the first item is notification to motorists. Make sure they're aware of the proposed change. We will install signs on all approaches, so we will have a new all-way stop intersection. We will update the pavement marking and signage. We will install temporary flags on the Walters Avenue signs to highlight the new signs. Install permanent stop-ahead warning signs on Walters. Install temporary stop-ahead signs with flashing red lights. There'd be a ground level for probably a couple weeks. And then the all-way stop is proposed to be installed on September 4th. Matt, do you have any questions?
Does anyone have any questions? This was something that we had talked about. I had some concerns about at the last meeting. I asked the village engineer firm to take a look further into, and it is clearly noted that it's required to improve safety at the intersection. We've tried the bump outs. We've tried other elements. We've tried flashers at that point. And still there's accidents, some of which have been serious. At this point, it's an administrative move to make a 4-way stop at that point, and so that's where we are.
So nothing else needs to happen, it's just going to go in on September 4th?
Nothing else. It's my understanding that nothing else needs to happen. This is not something that the board takes a vote on.
Correct. The municipal code allows the village manager to place stop signs where warranted. The board asked for a report. Our traffic consultant came back with the report saying it does meet warrants. Right at this point, I have the recommendation of our traffic consultant as well as our village engineer, so I'm prepared to go ahead and move forward with this.
So the only other thought I have, other than the markings, sort of at the intersection, because this is such a high traffic, get to the train, get away from the train area, would it be prudent to put some kind of signage or notifications at the train station or somewhere, or even in the village newsletter, to just let people really know that things are going to change? I mean, I don't know.
We're going to try to squeeze it into the September newsletter.
Okay.
And then we're also going to deploy the changeable message board signs that will flash a couple
Sure.
different messages ahead of time. And then
Okay.
there will be, you'll be able to tell that it's new when you pull up
Okay.
to it.
Because you know what I'm saying, like when you're used to leaving the house at 6:20 for the 6:27 train, and maybe you got to leave at 6:18, that's a whole world of mess for you, Okay.
We'll also,
One post in the Northbrook Moms Facebook group should do it. It's only been mentioned about 20 times in there.
Fastest form of communication is telebubby. Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, we'll also talk to District 28 as well.
Okay.
Traffic coming to Greenbrier and the
So-
walkers.
So, thank you, Matt. I think that's my report for the evening.
Thank you very much. Communications and legislation?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Community and sustainability?
Nothing tonight. President Pro Tem Karianis.
Thank you very much.
Excellent.
You can just call me President. But remarks for the good of the order. Anybody? Okay.
No.
Is there a motion to adjourn? We have no closed session tonight. So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Boom.